Welcome. How are you this afternoon?
Good. Well.
So with a small group like this, we don't want any interaction. Okay, just to be clear, if you have questions, 3x5 cards, submit them at the end. We'll post the answers to the questions we want to answer online in about a week.
What's your hashtag, by the way?
Yeah,
Old school.
Yeah, hashtag,
Good one.
exactly. No, but seriously, this is fantastic because we do have an opportunity to interact. So feel free to jump in at any time, engage our wonderful panelists to make sure you're in the right session. Number 30, right? Everybody here? Let's go ahead and
You
get
didn't
started.
ask whether the panelists are in the right section.
Are you in the right session? I think so.
I think so.
I think I recognize everyone here.
Good.
So speaking of panelists, let's meet our distinguished panel. I have some notes here. I told Amy that I had childhood pictures of her we were going to show, but we actually don't. Let's start with
Darn.
with Amy Tong. I think you can tell who Amy is. It's not this guy. Amy is Chief Deputy Director of the Office of Systems Integration, OSI, as well as being the Agency Information Officer for CHHSA. And I would like you to explain what exactly that means, having these two dual roles, very quickly.
Do you
Am I
not
the
see the
only
two
person
hat
that
I'm wearing? Yeah. So yes, I'm the Chief Deputy for a office, which is an arm specifically focused on project management for the Health and Human Services Agency. So you guys heard about Cover California's
Yeah.
Health Exchange Project. That's being one of it. We have the child welfare system, as well as the child support system, and all of the health-related systems. So all of those health-related items requires the central discipline of project management. So that's why my first hat is the Chief Deputy of that office, and then as well as being the Agency Information Officer.
And Amy also apparently has been doing this sort of thing since she was about 12. She served as the CTO for the California State Lottery, CTO for the Board of Equalization, the Chief of the Data Center for CalPERS, and was the acting CIO for the Water Resources Control Board, in addition to other exciting stuff. We're also joined by Jamie Mangrum. He is the Deputy Director and CIO of the Department of State Hospitals. I'd like him to give us a little more insight on his role, but also, since a teenager, he's been in the IT business, formerly the CIO of the Correctional Healthcare Service, the Assistant Secretary of IT for the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, as well as CIO for the California Department of General Services. Jamie, would you like to comment on your current role?
I'm just working through each of the departments in state service as the CIO. I'm planning on doing each of them in about a week's stint, and hopefully by the end of my career I'll be able to get through all of them. We're kind of this really unknown entity in the state. We're the third largest department in the state, and we have about 6,500 what they call forensic mental health patients, and these are violent felony patients that come and stay with us for anywhere from about 45 days to the rest of their life. So we're kind of like a correctional system that provides good mental health and drugs. So.
Excellent. And yeah, LinkedIn called and they said they're out of space. So your profile, you're going to have to start editing.
Okay.
We're also joined by Chuck Lott, who is our Director for State and Local Government and Education from EMC Corporation. Chuck has done stints at Deloitte & Touche, Price Waterhouse, and most recently, though, was with, why don't you tell us?
I helped start a company called Natoma Technologies about 15 years ago, and just moved over to EMC about 3.5 years ago.
Okay, excellent. Before we start, my name is Dave Nicholson. I'm a Cloud Business Director for EMC. I work to integrate our federated companies into a cohesive group out in the field with private sector and public sector accounts, and I'll be moderating the panel today. So first things first, who would like to give me a definition of hybrid cloud? Because we're going to be talking about stuff related to hybrid cloud. Anyone want to give me a definition? I see someone scratching their nose. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So textbook definition of hybrid cloud is the optimization of workloads between on-premise systems that has its own private-based architecture merged with a public cloud offering such as an AWS or an eCloud type of solution, where you can dynamically shift workloads between two groups to optimize your business objectives.
Okay, thank you, Captain Long Answer.
Do we give out awards for like?
Yes, that was very good.
I know.
Anyone else? Some different something maybe that he said where you look at it differently from the, no wrong or right answer.
Uh-oh.
Anyone else like to?
Now I have to be serious.
Yeah.
Joe is in the house.
So-
answer is a combination between private and public cloud.
Yeah. So combination of public and private. I'm going to suggest a definition that we use at least for the purposes of our interaction today, just so we're all sort of on the same page. Because sometimes certain words elicit certain thoughts that maybe we want to kind of rein in for the purpose of our talk. So first and foremost, think of cloud as an operational model, as was discussed. It doesn't really denote anything about location. Cloud does not mean public. It does not necessarily mean private. Could be either. Could be both. So cloud is really about the operational model, and we're going to talk more about that later. Hybrid, and this is a key, although usually it will include some public component, it doesn't have to. So for the purposes of our conversation today, you can think of hybrid as the ability to expand beyond a single on-premises instance of IT. So being able to move from one place to another, whether it is 2 state data centers or your agency data center and Cal Cloud or your agency data center and AWS. Those are all examples of hybrid, but it's not necessarily something that includes public. Okay? Make sense? So there's an organization called NIST, and this is the standards body definition of what is required for a well-run hybrid cloud. The idea that you are brokering as well as building things in your organization. So you might have on-premises IT as well as off-premises IT. The concept of self-service, the consumerization of devices. So you can't demand that people come at you from just one device. Mobile is a big part of that. Transparency in pricing and service levels. You have to at least show people what they're paying for when they consume it. Standardization of services, so that you can at least manage the flow of requests into IT and not have everything be a one-off. And then there's this concept of automation that's behind hybrid cloud. And there is much buzz about hybrid cloud in the market. So really the first question I have for the panel is all of this buzz around hybrid cloud just hype? I mean, what do you, I'll toss this to Jamie first. I mean, do you see the requirement for changing to a new operational model for IT?
Well, I do. We primarily, I'm in an organization right now where we really didn't have the on-premise technologies. So ironically, now we have a definition for what we're currently doing. So what we're doing is called hybrid cloud. And so it is basically, I'd say it's not hype, it's more or less the more common, I'd say, operational profile for IT organizations today that are in the process of deciding what is in the cloud or what is something they actually take care of themselves.
Okay, Amy, any thoughts on, are
Yeah.
you a cloud believer, or is this just all latest buzzwords?
Well, aside from the latest buzzword, I do think that, from an operation model, by the way, I'm not using the mic. Is that okay? I'm pretty loud. All right, good. If we kind of really equate that as a operational model, Jamie's department is the same agency as Health Human Services Agency. And within our agency, there are 15 departments and offices. And Jamie's department is one of the largest one. And then we have a CIO here who have a fairly small department.
Very small.
Very small. So, you look at the two spectrum, then when you're talking about cloud, it's really a way of what are the options for different size of IT organization in order to provide their IT services in a flexible way. So it does not require every department needs to have their own data center, every department provide infrastructure, every department from business solution, just looking at the combination with all the offering out there, what you can leverage, what you can consume versus what you can provide yourself. I think that's what I'm looking at, what is really, it's a business model description rather than a technology description.
Great. Chuck, any thoughts?
Just one quick thought. I mean, as one of the companies involved with all this stuff, we're finding our customers are really saying, we want to find out how we can be more agile. We want to find out how we can, in the private sector, save money. In the public sector, how we can ask our people to do more with less, which is a fundamental challenge in the public sector, as we all know. And we're finding that technology really isn't the conversation. It's really about the people in the process.
So it turns out the rest of the world agrees with, I think, the assessments. The idea that hybrid cloud is key for, or the ideas around hybrid cloud are really key for delivering the kind of agility that organizations need moving forward. So the traditional way of deploying IT is not agile enough for the requirements of the future. And that's great. First step is to deploy a technology platform. Gartner and Forrester agree. A lot of movement in the cloud space in coming years. Okay, so let's just assume the technology is in place, because that's what we're here to discuss today. Now that the technology is there, now that you've made the decisions that you may have thought were the hard decisions about the platform, the physical platform, now what? Now what needs to happen? What kinds of organizational things need to be changed from a people and process perspective? That's what we're really here to discuss. So Chuck, I'd like to start with you on the subject of kind of the challenges to organizational change. Do you, in your travels around the country, working with different public sector agencies, do you think that those challenges are different than what private sector sees, or what are some of those challenges? What do you think?
Well, I think the answer is yes and no, all at the same time.
Thanks, Chuck. Amy?
And I appreciate that offer. But one of the things that's interesting about the public sector versus the private sector is that once an organization's of a certain size, no matter which sector it's in, they have the same sort of challenges of people and process. It's not, again, not the technology. It's the governance. It's how do I get people to do X and do Y when we need to go down path Z. That can be a very challenging exercise. In the public sector, particularly in today's market, I think one of the challenges we're seeing is what I would call the silver tsunami. Maybe you guys have heard that before. There's a change in the workforce that's coming, not only people retiring, but also the millennials coming up. And so I think how IT is delivered will be a function of those cultural changes that are going to be emerging as well.
Amy, have you ever seen anything like this kind of change before? Is this the first change you've experienced in the 27 different roles that I outlined at the beginning?
Yeah, first one.
First change ever?
First change ever. In fact, if I may, I want to see if I can get some survey results from the audience. Is that okay?
Of course, yeah.
I mean, because I see some of my former colleagues, some of my former departments, they still willing to recognize me. That's a good thing. They didn't cut me off yet. And then also some of the departments I get to work with now. Maybe just by show of hand, what is the number one, if you would, concern, if I just list a couple of out, that in your department you're sensing that people are unknown about when the conversation of cloud comes up? Is it the resources, the ability that people using it? Has that ever been a concern? No?
Are you talking about end users or IT people?
Both.
I think there's concern from an IT standpoint of what you're turning to is going to be, and I'm thinking more specifically about CalCloud, is going to be robust enough it's going to meet the requirements. I'm not finding a problem with it right now, but if I'm talking about Office 365, I don't think that there's concern from people as much.
Right. So it's the unknown what the service it will be coming back, okay?
Everybody seems to ask the speed. Do we have enough bandwidth and security?
Okay.
I was going to say security.
Okay. All right.
I don't want to give up control.
Good.
I
Yes.
think we already using the cloud, so for the California lottery, that it's basically we can provisioning faster, and can achieve things, deploy things much faster. However, come down to again some of the security pointing out is like, well, we have data confidential. What is that, data classification line, and where do we have the full sample? I heard Office 365 is basically is out there, and have government portion of the cloud for it to utilize, and then for all the things that we use, for example, like short code and stuff like that, and now there's cloud for that also, to manage all those stuff. So I guess the question now is like, okay, where do I want to stick the confidential data or PI data in what portion of the cloud? And that's it's going to come down to security, and that's where the challenge comes to kind of pick and choose which direction is going to work best for the protection of data and the compliance with regulations and stuff like that.
Right.
Certainly from a state CIO perspective across the U.S., the number one topic today and the number two topic last year was cybersecurity. So it's top of mind across virtually all the public sectors, K-12, higher ed, local government as well.
Yeah. But just hearing just quickly from the audience on this, security and number one, the control, what does it really mean for the staff, whether your IT staff or the user using accessing the cloud, as well as what would be the performance, from an SLA perspective. I wouldn't, mind venture to say these some sort of the same questions that was also raised when email was introduced, when internet was introduced, and I don't know what was introduced prior to that. So I guess that's my point of saying, yeah, it's a new item. The concern, I don't think is anything unique.
Automatic elevators, perhaps.
Yeah.
I think that, there's two types of security. So you're talking about the operational security, and that's what we've talked about so far. Being an organization that's very labor-centric, then there's also that perceived fear of job security, is you find within the civil service classifications individuals that are fearful that the cloud means a reduction in the, basically the workforce. And luckily in my organization, that's a really easy answer, primarily because I've got like 12,000 end users and I only have 134 staff, which is ridiculous. And so, but that's kind of every CIO in this state can sing the same song. So, basically cloud was basically made for us. It basically, there's so much in our IT organizations that we're not able to do today and that we're not doing today that we really should be doing. I've listened to different sessions where, we'll go years without properly patching our workstations and things like that because we put ourselves in a reactionary pose in how we conduct our day-to-day business. So there's always work for our staff to do. It's just conducting kind of that transition from being an on-premise management type of organization to more of an administrative of those virtual technologies than that you're administering for, delivering services to your client base. I don't think and believe that there'd be any reduction in workforce whatsoever. I think that that's just kind of the unknown. And once you take people through that process of that change management in the organization, that they find that not only are their jobs secure, there's a lot more higher end things that they're able to do, and they're not having to run all over the place and physically mess with boxes and server racks and things like that.
So, yeah, makes a lot of sense. Just in the broader marketplace, we see often organizations having those concerns that change means some sort of reduction. We're all going to be replaced by robots. The reality is in the IT business, there is an increasing amount of stuff we need to do.
Right.
And the only way we can keep our eyeballs above water is to implement these more efficient policies.
I have not seen a project yet that I'm given approval for and funding for where I actually get the staff for it that I need to effectively do the project. We do them anyways, but it just doesn't happen. So how do you then fill that delta? And I think that this type of automation is how we basically are enabled to do that type of stuff. That really is the answer to how do we do more with less, because we're always starting out with less to begin with.
Yeah, we could all do more with more if this guy over here would tell us where the secret folder is, where they keep next week's winning lotto numbers. I can't get that out of my mind from a security standpoint. So if you look at the way that IT has been ordered traditionally, and I know, Jimmy, if you can kind of see that as a visual here, but I am going to describe what we're looking at. There have been traditional roles, people who have specialized for sometimes decades on things like networking, server administration, storage, and then there was the advent of virtualization. So you have virtualization specialists, and then of course you have DBAs and all sorts of specialty folks. If you think of those as vertical specializations, cloud sort of cuts across horizontally. And these are some examples of the migrations of traditional roles to new roles. Now, for Amy and Jamie, have you seen, are you at a point in your operational model development where this is an issue yet in terms of migration of roles or movement of roles? Or do you have a, Jamie, start with you?
Well, I was thinking about this a lot after all the times we talked about this as a group before doing the panel, and I came to the realization that this is just the next thing that we're changing to. The one thing that IT has always done, and if you look at, we went from punch cards to mainframes to server-based technology and so on. So we're very adept at making that adaptive transition between those different types of technologies and so on. And I just see this is the next big hurdle for us to move forward to. Our IT workforce, we're always having to deal with the cycle of change with all the different technologies. So, whether organizations realize it or not, they're already actually fairly adept at doing this, I believe.
Yeah, and if I'm going to use the CalPERS experience actually when I was there. I know that when we talked about cloud and there's an automatic inference, maybe it's the infrastructure, the system administrator no longer needed to, going physically to manage the server, instead they're managing remotely because it's somewhere out there in the cloud. And that's a skill set type of change or a different role. But for those of you that has a role in the business application development area, it's very similar type of change. When I was in CalPERS, we literally just went through a rollout of the business transformation project, changing from 49 legacy system into a modern technology. And the infrastructure side, it's one hand, it needed its sheer amount of work, but it was really the programmer or the developer that with the organization that has the legacy skill set, whether they were sort of COBOL or database and all that, how do we transfer that knowledge, not necessarily the skill set of understanding the language, but all of the business knowledge that they have about the application they're supporting, and transition them into more of a business subject matter SME role. If they have an interest to learn brand new language, awesome. If they don't, they simply wanted to say how does this business knowledge can assist with this transformation of the organization. That's the role they play. So I think this is just the evolution, to Jamie's point, right? From technology, whether you're in the infrastructure side or the application side, those evolution continues.
They always are.
Right?
It's the constant in our business.
So the two of you would see this as more of an opportunity for people involved with IT than a threat or something to be concerned about?
I do. I think you're always going to have people that are resistant to the change, and they're usually the very small minority, especially in IT, just because it's our business to change. And so, I think that as long as you put really, really good succession planning and, those change planning, that involve training and developing your workforce to the new skill sets that you need, and you basically keep on doing really good, solid communications to your people that, your role is just changing. It's not going away.
Right.
Your job is going to
Evolving,
be fulfilling and just as technical as it always has been, if not more, but you're probably going to be doing it in a better way. And so, just basically filling that void with good, solid communication so people aren't afraid of making the transition.
Certainly from an EMC perspective, we went through this exercise over about the last 7 years, and so we're now a fully IT as a service organization, and we went through similar things that you went through at CalPERS, where we had, thousands of applications on a global basis that need to be consolidated. So we had a big project to pull all those together. We called it Propel, and it took about 2.5 years to get done. We also consolidated our CRM systems from one version to another and did system consolidation as well. What we found is some results that I think that are relevant that map to the public sector as well as private sector, is that we saw, 40 to 60% increase in the productivity of IT people, meaning that they had less sort of busy work to do and more free time to do new, interesting, cool things in terms of application development or supporting the business that they're involved in. So that was one benefit that was really interesting. We also saved millions and millions of dollars, frankly, because we did a lot of consolidation, and we did outsource some of our own stuff to cloud providers as well. So we're eating our own Kool-Aid from that standpoint. And then third, sort of an unexpected benefit from all the consolidation and rationalization was that we reduced our carbon footprint. We saved hundreds of millions of pounds of CO2 as a result of this exercise. So there's real benefit to doing this, but it's not an easy process, and it's not technology. Again, it's just like Jamie and Amy are saying, it's people and process.
Yeah, and when Chuck says we eat our own Kool-Aid, that wasn't a mistake. We actually freeze the Kool-Aid into popsicles, and
That's right.
and we do eat it. And on this sort of journey to cloud for us, us being from an EMC perspective, VMware is one of our federation companies. So we were trying to virtualize things like Oracle and SAP environments when Oracle and SAP weren't quite ready for that. So for us, it's been kind of a 10, 12-year journey. And along the way, going through these organizational changes, really you can ask the question, what might a new organization look like? And it depends on where you are in this kind of journey to turning things into a cloud model. Not sure that you're going to be able to read the boxes here, but there are very, very different roles from the traditional network expert, storage expert, server expert. These are roles that span all of those different silos in the organization. And one of the things we kind of have seen two different ways that organizations implement this. There's the sort of traditional island, new island approach, where you segregate off the new stuff with people who want to be part of that. And then over time, people migrate from the legacy island to the new island. Then there is, so you have that where they're completely separate. The other approach would be kind of a major minor approach where your major, if you will, could be networking. But then you minor in something like cloud product management, where you're the person who decides, helps figure out what the next item in the self-service catalog is going to be. When you think of organizational change, and you've all touched on this a bit already, but think about some individuals that you work with. What do you think your organization is going to be more amenable to? The idea of new and existing working alongside, or does everybody transition over? Have you given any thoughts to that?
Basically, you really don't. I've never seen anybody do the lift and shift and go from one paradigm to a completely new. I don't think in business that's practical, and I don't think in state service we can even afford that. So I think that that hybrid approach where you're always going to have some legacy mixed with the new, and you're always in that constant transition of legacy to new, and doing it a more gradual kind of what you can bite off and effectively chew. With a Kool-Aid, and move forward. So, I mean, I think that that's probably the more practical model, and it's also, too, what I think people can digest and feel comfortable with, because there's new, but there's also then the things that they're comfortable in that they trust there as well. And so it's just an easier way to take an organization forward through anything, whether you're talking a programmatic organization or an IT organization.
Amy, any thoughts on what you think would be the right model?
I don't necessarily think there is like a one-size-fit-all model. I think really depending on how your organization are set up today. If the folks are more into a more we call a functional unit, you have this group of folks, and now it is because of a skill set they need to be, trained and transition. Great, you can work with that group. Or if your organization is more supported in the way it's not by functional line, but by the business solution that they support. And so whenever that solution is ready to go, then all the supporting staff, can transition at the same time. But of course, you couple with that, with all of the training in places and all the heads up work and the groundwork that needs to be taken in place. So I think it's really kind of depending on how your organization is set up today and what would be the impact if you go by the functional route or the business grouping route.
Certainly within our company, we've spent $20 billion, I think, on acquisitions over the last decade or so. And as a consequence, that really puts a little bit of work into the IT organizations that we absorbed through all of those acquisitions. And even with that, we are still going through the process of adoption and getting people on board. So to Jamie, to your point, I would agree 100%. You just can't lift and shift and solve it that way, even in the private sector. You might think you can because you're private sector and you can be more agile, and if you don't do it, you're gone, that kind of thing. It just doesn't work that way. It's not real and feasible because you still have to maintain business operations. You still have to maintain all your critical infrastructure so that people can do their job regardless of the role that they're in. And so that kind of process just isn't really something that's amenable to being a world-class organization.
We find that for us, because when I came into my job here, I adopted 8 standalone organizations, and they had all created their own unique IT universes where no two things were the same. And so we've spent like the past 3.5 years kind of getting them to come into a single, to function as an enterprise, to function as a system. And the key to that, and I see it's the key for this as well, is just having really effective decision-making processes in place. That was a huge paradigm shift for the workforce, to be able to make decisions at a local level, and then suddenly, automatically they think that it's me making the decisions for them from this point forward, and it's not. There's basically, these enterprise architectural committees that are responsible for specific technologies. They now understand that they actually all have a say. There's this business process that they go through where they make then a recommendation forward, and then it's adopted by the organization. It's the same for this. I mean, an organization will survive that has really good sound governance, and I mean, that's kind of a catchphrase, but our term, but it's true. It's just that really effective business process of how you make decisions in your organization and how you move forward and then transition, and basically make those types of changes. It's the same for this, as far as I can see it. If you have a strong organization and you effectively make decisions today, you're going to be able to then to lead your workforce and your organization through a cloud-based transition as well.
So from your perspective as CIO of your organization, when you hear silo, the first thing that you think about isn't the silo of infrastructure down here.
Right.
You're seeing it from a different perspective.
We do. We had 8 of everything. When we migrated to the state's email system, we had to migrate 8 times. We have our own unique challenges. So the irony of it is we kind of had a clean slate to go to. So making transitions to like the cloud and a hybrid cloud approach to doing business was kind of the point on the horizon that we just set. And this is what then the 8 organizations were working together collaboratively to work towards. And so we kind of leap past that uniform enterprise that was old on-premise technology, and we call it jumping past the 20th century right into the 21st century. And so that's what we're doing. So now we look at I really can't provide on-premise services to my clients. I don't have the staffing resources or the budget resources to do it. So I really see that if I didn't have cloud right now available to me in different, whether I'm buying Watchdocs, which ends up riding on top of AWS and things like that, it's the only way that I can provide services. My staff like it because it actually, for them, it sees that they're doing their job. They're actually, the customers ask for something, they're actually providing the customer something, the customer gives positive feedback. It's a good interaction. At the end of the day, the employees go home feeling as though I actually did something substantive in my job. This was cool. You didn't have somebody yelling at you because you're providing them something that's 25 to 30 years old and it's dying. So.
And these are, and in this case, where that stuff lives that you're delivering, it doesn't matter.
Well,
it does in the sense that maybe you couldn't do it on premises if you wanted to, But ultimately, the people delivering the service who are happy that they delivered the service,
Right.
the fact that it's not on the other side of the door in a data center versus 100 miles away, it doesn't matter.
Now then, what my organization focuses on from a physical perspective is basically the necessary infrastructure to deliver those technologies. And so then for the past 3.5 years, that's what we've focused on, is we put that in place, then everything else follows behind it. And that is actually what's starting to happen. We're starting to roll out statewide systems that are basically delivered to us as a service, our staff scheduling system, things like that. And it doesn't matter whether it's something that is housed and provided to us from OTEC or from, Amazon Web Services or whoever. It's just a consumable service that we pay for, and we provide it then to our customers. And the customers, they don't know where you get your electricity from. I mean, it's the same concept. It just shows up, it works, and, they do their business. And that's what we're doing right now. So,
Amy, what do you think about this when you hear the term hybrid cloud and you think about services being delivered from either public or on premises? I mean, what's your sense? Do you have the same sense as Jamie in terms of it just doesn't matter where it's coming from, just the best way to get the service?
Yes, the short answer is I feel like at the end of the day, from a IT perspective, you just wanted to provide the best service you can, and in many cases, being a broker to look for the best of breed in order to bring that service to your customer. Sometimes it's in some cases it's a pretty good role to be in. But you flip it around now. Sometimes you had to think about, well, what about the IT staff? Understanding that they might thinking whether this is a job security issue, whether what am I going to do? This goes back to, I think, as an IT leader, really for you to carry that vision to be a service delivery model. The why and the objective really needs to be articulated clearly and discussed with the staff, so the staff can be behind it. Naturally, folks will be concerned. What is going to be happening to me? How am I going to return? Our skill, but the path of laying in front of them. Well, you may be a system administrator today to manage this on-premise service. Tomorrow, you're still going to be a system administrator, you just manage remotely.
Right.
And really, from a functional perspective, it doesn't change that much. I think having that level of conversation can really help you get your staff behind it, and therefore, the model of this service delivery to your customer can be better promoted.
I'd add one thing that we're also seeing across the U.S., all the things you just said, both of you just said, but in addition to looking for an ability to be agile. So we see that customers, as they adopt cloud, however you describe it, hybrid cloud here, we're talking about it today, they want to be able to make changes from one, if you will, provider to another provider, as transparent and seamlessly as possible when they need to make those changes. So they can make economic changes far easier now in a more agile way based on where the market is evolving. And that's another thing we're seeing the customers embrace in the public sector, not just private sector, but in the public sector as well, as they adopt a hybrid cloud model.
Maybe I'll throw out one more. Again, maybe back to the audience survey. How many of you are in the, I'll call it the infrastructure side of the house, assuming you guys are our IT? Okay. How many of you are in the business solution side of it? Or the business architect and, yeah. Okay. Some are none. I'm sitting there, maybe it's hybrid of their skills, their focus. But even in that, I know we give a lot of example about the infrastructure service. I think on the business solution, it's the same way, right? The traditional custom-built application versus the utilization of COTS product, and then you do configuration management on those COTS product. But the ultimate goal is still back to what Chuck, what you're saying. You can make changes faster. You reduce your cost of maintenance, the custom build versus the COTS. And yes, that put more emphasis on the business process change of it. But with any solution that you're going towards a more of a standard approach or a remote approach, yeah, the onus is back to the organization from organization change management. So that's why I say when it comes to hybrid cloud, whether it's applying that on a infrastructure side or being applied to a cost delivery of business solution. I think it's the same.
You know, I just went back to this hybrid cloud requirement slide. A couple of things that you've all said are interesting. When we talk about self-service, well, first brokering as well as build. Often we talk about brokering and building from like the CIO perspective only, but it sounds like Jamie and Amy's comments really have sparked the thought in my mind that all throughout the organization we become builders and brokers. And maybe you're administering a tool that is out in the public space as opposed to a tool that's local. But essentially you are an administrator at that point, and you are also either a builder or a broker of the services that you're providing. If you're making someone happy with the service you provide, who cares if you built it or brokered it, in a sense. The other thing to clarify, when we talk about self-service, who is the self? Who is the end user who's being serviced? In some organizations, it's someone like me. I need a new battery for my laptop, and I can go on and request it myself. In most organizations, self-service really has to do with automation. It's automating the processes that traditional IT folks used to have to do manually. So the person who is being served is actually an IT practitioner. So although you see the shopping cart there, as though it's an allusion to going and ordering something online from Amazon like that, really, it's about IT practitioners taking advantage of automation often.
There's even another phrase in the application development world, continuous development. Can you imagine continuous development? So there's going to be cases where, particularly in the mobile application world, where there's continuous development. I mean, my apps get updated, 14 times a week, right? But at the same time, a very large project like some of the ones that Amy has, that continuous development process on the maintenance side may work, but during that one-time rebuild or refresh effort, probably doesn't make as much sense. So there's different versions of application development out there as well. And when you have vendors involved, you need to measure them, and continuous development makes it very tough to do so. So you'll start to see that kind of adoption as well in the application development world. And if the hybrid cloud can help those IT people provision services and do development in a faster, speedier way that is, as automated as legitimately possible, then that's a benefit to everybody.
So this, I think we already addressed really this question in detail. The idea, who are these people who are going to be who are going to fill the new roles in these organizations, and where do I find them? And the answer is, we have them.
I would say, folks in the audience today, because we're going to convince you guys to be a champion for it, right?
But the reality is we're all in a world of constant change, and I think we all realize that. We have some examples here for you to study. There will be a quiz at the end. Actually, this is in the deck because the deck will be posted online. But there are some examples of new roles and responsibilities. I think one of the interesting things about this is, if you look over on the side, we're talking about new roles for people who have a ton of experience. This isn't requirement. Just graduated from high school. We'll accept $9 an hour. That's not the requirement. We're talking about seasoned professionals with 5, 10, 15, 20 years of experience moving into a transitional role that maybe gets them, bridges the gap between the business side and the infrastructure side in a way that wasn't possible or necessary in the past. So a lot of new, interesting stuff as we move forward. Any final thoughts or questions from the audience in our closing minutes? Jamie, did you have any final thoughts?
I think I'd rather hear the questions.
Yeah. Amy, any?
Same.
Yep.
Questions?
Any questions or comments or thoughts, sir?
Just out of curiosity, you're talking about the millennials. Do you see the entry-level people coming out of college and with an IT education keeping up with this sort of technology?
I think it's more in their nature, frankly. The folks who are coming out of college are already, iPad, tablet centric. They everything just works, and they're coming out of school with different ways of looking at things than earlier older generations who think themselves far wiser. Maybe we are to some degree, and maybe we aren't to some degree, but I think that they will have a different work style, maybe even a different work ethic. And they will work hard, they'll be good people, that's not the question. It's just going to be a different way that they are managed and the way that they're going to be expected to be treated in the workforce. And those are just fundamental cultural realities that I think is real. I mean, you guys are hiring people and trying to find ways to fill jobs and do that. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll speak from one behavior that I've seen. Find it quite interesting is the difference between. I started as a COBOL programmer. So, throughout the years, as I worked through the ranks, and even today, I have to admit, there are times when people say, oh, I wish we can do this certain things. And the automatic mindset is, okay, maybe we can build something. But if you talk to the, folks who are coming out, if business say, hey, I wonder if we can do something, their first reaction is to search what's available out there for them to just adopt. I think that, to me, it's a good example of, if the definition of using a hybrid cloud, what does it truly mean? They look for consumable service that they can leverage first, as opposed to, like me, growing up as a programmer, I'm like, hey, I want to go code something. And just that mindset alone, I think, helps this direction that we're going.
It even goes to your comment of control. They don't have the same view of control as others do, and that's just sort of the whom they are and their personalities, and it's the nature of the evolving market as well. So
it's true. They view personal privacy and things like that is completely different, because the way they view it is giving up or ceding that control allows them, in their eyes, a lot more convenience, and so on. They were saying, I was reading a thing the other day, they were talking about the next version of like what we call Siri and the other AIs that we deal with today will be far more intelligent, and people will actually be comfortable enough to have them like listen to your conversations and stuff all the time. So it's automatically tracking the things you're supposed to do and stuff. And I guess I'm already at that age, because I was like, oh my God, I don't think I ever want to have that happen. I don't like the Siri on my phone as it is now. Why do I want to have it listening to me all the time and telling me what I need to do? I got married. So,
that's giving up control right there. Yes.
Well, I refuse to believe that I'm not 19 still in here, so I know that millennials are different. My 8-year-old son will shout out, pause, 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 when he wants something to pause, as though the world is controlled by a DVR, which I find fascinating. Any other questions as we get ready to close out? Thoughts? Comments? We have hybrid clouds for sale here in a box. Well, with that, I would like to first and foremost thank our panel, Jamie and Amy. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Chuck. This has been great. Hope you felt this was a valuable use of your time. Thank you very much for attending, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks.